All right, welcome to today's conversation on planning for 2022 success. I am really excited to be talking about this today. This is something I've thought a lot about, and I expect that you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So, thank you for making the time for the next 30 minutes for us to have a great conversation about this topic. Our goal and my goal is to make sure that you're entering into 2022 with an ability to position your organization to be able to take advantage of the gains that are happening within the market, to take advantage of the change that's possible for your organization, and to do so in a structured way. So today I'm going to be talking about how that change is possible, how to position yourself to be able to lead that change, and also talking through some technology maturity curves in the relationship between them and the way you need to think about your organization. So we'll cover that in the context of mindset, impact, and the maturity associated with tech. My name is Nathan Loznoski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. And after this session, we would love to spend 2 to 4 hours working with your organization to be able to dig into your specific scenario. We also have a group workshop coming up on January 26th, which will be an expanded version of this webinar. So you think about the compressed version of this that we'll be going through today. On January 26th, we'll be doing an expanded version of this conversation where we do more interactive. We're talking about various scenarios, asking questions. Those have been really interesting. We've done them for our product development conversations and data and AI and others. I found that to be really, really interesting conversations with different companies. It's a peer sharing group, so definitely don't miss that. And if you prefer to do it one-on-one, specifically with your organization, we'd love to do that too. And we would love to invest in that meeting with you. So take the kind of conversations we're having today and think about that in the context of where we might be able to take this with your organization into a structured next step. All right. So I want to kick this off by just talking about what does it mean to organize yourself to be able to lead your organization into 2022 successfully. And I think the best way that I can think about that and when I think about the customers that I'm working with that are very successful and the ones that sometimes struggle, it's the organizations that are positioned with a change agent or a group of change agents that have a boldness and insightfulness in order for them to be able to navigate the opportunity that's in front of their business. So if you think about what it means to position yourself as a change agent for 2022, it's a combination of two things. It's a mindset and it's a purposeful change. It's a mindset and it's an approach. If you think about the mindset, it's a person who is bold, they're confident, they have a curiosity about them in the way that they think about what's in front of them at their business. They're emotionally aware. This is what separates the jerk change agent from the one that you love working with. I had a individual who he indicated like, isn't this what gets you fired being a change agent? And I think no. I think the people who get fired being change agents are usually the ones that are not emotionally aware. They're the ones that lose the ability to be able to work as an effective part of a team, but also lead that team. The mindset also includes people who are tenacious. They aren't willing to accept a situation where we're not putting in our best. They continue to follow up on what they know is an effort that needs focus. And ultimately, they're always learning. They're individuals who are understanding that they're not the smartest person in the room. Sometimes they might be, but most of the time they're not. And they need to be a person who's always asking the right questions or encouraging others to ask the right questions. And then you combine that mindset with a person who's willing to challenge the status quo in a respectful and appropriate way. They think beyond the ask, meaning like something is happening within the business. Someone asks them to do something. They ask the why question in a respectful and appropriate way. They're trying to understand, why am I doing this? And attach that why to the activity and determine, is this the right thing to be doing? And what can I be doing beyond that initial ask to be able to make this successful? They listen well. They're a person who listens with purpose, not just listening to state their opinion. They're listening to understand more about you. in what's happening within the business, what's happening with the question they're asking. They push the boundaries of what's happening within their organization. They build relationships with people that are going to enable them to be able to drive the change, and they ultimately deliver results. But they deliver results that are the right results that people can get behind. And if you combine these things together, it really makes up what an appropriate change agent is. And this is the difference between the most successful companies and those that are not as successful. They're people who are willing to function as change agents within their organization. And you don't have to be the organization's key leader to do this. Anybody can be a change agent. It just takes these qualities put together and the intentionality behind them to be able to drive that outcome. So I think my number one challenge for you, even beyond the technology that we'll talk about today, is to be change agents within your organization. Everybody makes New Year's resolutions. A lot of times we don't keep them. But if there's ones that I would take, it's that you think about, am I positioning myself as a change agent within my organization in a respectful and appropriate way to be able to drive what's important to me and important to the organization toward its mission and executing on its mission within the world. If you're interested in understanding and listening to people who have been change agents and have spoken about it, I would love to recommend the Change Agent podcast, which I host, and has some just tremendous leaders who've spoken about their organizations over the last year. Mike Adams talked about change within Brunswick organization and the way that he thought about pushing change, executing change, what the right way to get people on board is. Zach Hughes talked a lot about leadership and emotional intelligence and positioning the right kinds of conversations, the right kind of leadership within your organization. Zach Hughes also has a really great podcast of his own. He's a fantastic leader. And Jamar Jones had a great conversation about his book, Change Your Circle, Change Your Life, which is really about putting yourself in a position where you're surrounded by people that are going to advance you in your capabilities so you can better advance the things around you. So definitely take a look at that, changeagentpodcast.com, and be inspired by some of the leaders that are talking about how you can be a change agent in your business. So let's talk a little bit about, if you're taking on the mantle of being a change agent, what are the areas of impact that are critical for leaders to be inspiring in and transforming right now in their organization? So if you think about your organization, I see two different major areas where technology is absolutely necessary to be transforming the way we think about our businesses. And I think about that in the context of above the line and below the line. So if you think about below the line capabilities are where we have traditionally thought about IT, but they're ones that have tremendous opportunity for us to execute on where the bell curve of technology is at right now. Emerging technologies aside, there are tremendous amount of transformation happening right where the cloud has hit organizations. So IT operations is really about stabilizing, maintaining, and enabling. It's about driving efficiency so the rest of the business can grow. So you'll notice that like IT operations cost continues to largely stay stable over year, 3%-ish of your organizational revenue tends to go toward IT generic costs, which is the secure modern workplace, the enablement of the individual employees to be able to do the work that they're doing on a daily basis. My compute device, my collaboration, my communication, all that has to be done in a secure and efficient way. That's enabling them to have a commodity that lets them be productive. More and more, this is becoming a commoditized state. Not in a sense that it's simply easier to do, which is a component of it, but that it's what people just assume they have when they come to the office. The cloud transformation is what enables everything that goes on top of it. The ability for me to be agile in the way that I deliver capabilities to my customers and the way I enable the rest of the business. So companies are taking advantage of either the migration of on-premise data centers, or even more so, they're preparing their business to be able to take advantage of cloud capabilities so they can bring those to market. So this is what we call below the line. The above the line capabilities is really where most IT leaders, most technology leaders need to grow their ability to be a change agent within their business. This is where you're driving new revenue and operational savings within customers that you're working with. You're driving your core business's mission with your organization's customers or people that are served by your business to either drive new revenue, new engagement, new operational savings, new relationship to your mission through products you're bringing to market, where you're bringing that new digital capability to your customers, or you're thinking about your business in different ways with data and AI, whether that's coming from your ERP system or it's driving that from intelligent AI that's helping you to make appropriate decisions. Sometimes this is about connecting to your customers better. If you're in a customer service industry, a lot of times it's about understanding my customers and connecting to them in a way that lets me represent my business better to them and serve them better. All this is about thinking about this area of business in a technology centric way. And it's an area where technology spend is exploding because it's directly related to revenue growth. So when you think about your business, what I'd ask you to think about as a change agent is where in each of these areas have I placed investment this year as a change agent to be able to drive my organization forward? So examples of this would be above the line services are usually tied to driving new investment that's tied to ROI. This idea of increasing sales or driving new revenue attached to a platform like a customer calculation app or an ordering platform. Well, a customer of mine is going to be driving $50 billion through a new ordering platform this year with a goal of increasing 20% sales year over year. Below the line is about potentially maintaining cost neutrality or about simply mitigating risks, such as through cloud migrations or enablement activities. And understanding the relationship between both of these in order to way to present yourself to the business to be able to gain traction and momentum. So in order to think about pursuing these four main domains of technology, what I'd like to present before you are maturity curves that help you to understand where your organization is today. So if you want to go ahead and screenshot the maturity curves and mark up where am I today in this maturity curve. So we're going to go through one for each of these particular domains. So the first one we're going to talk about is the apps and product maturity curve. And the apps and product maturity curve is really about above the line, right? So you're thinking about your core mission, whatever your core mission is, and the extent to which my core mission is delivered with technology. And sometimes you might say, well, my core mission is like all these things, like it's got all these subdomains. Well, pick one. Pick one of the most important things that your organization does and how well it has been delivered through technology to your customers. So if you were to start in the lower left-hand corner, think about that in the context of a business that's low tech. It has no technology delivery at all. Maybe it's a set of organ business that runs coffee shops, and they have no digital platform. People come into the coffee shop. They have a pour. They don't even use a sophisticated. This is a coffee snob coffee shop. And they walk in and they do a pour over coffee, right? So you all they did is literally heat up the water and pour it over the ground beans. And maybe they didn't even heat it up with a technology way. They just kind of they had a pretty low tech way of heating that. So legacy business, right? Very low tech. And maybe that's okay for them. But the challenge is all of a sudden COVID hits, right? Or we have some need to be able to try to expand our business. So the question then is, how can I move up the maturity curve to a spot where my product is aligned to my customers? And maybe that's the customer comes in and they have some additional asks. And they're like, you know what, I like that, that I come in here on a weekly basis. Maybe you could be more prepared for me. Maybe it takes me 10 minutes to get through the line. How can I, and they start to maintain lists of what they need to have at certain points. They get better at their production. They just get better at simply delivering their product. Maybe their product availability starts to mature, but it's still not that tech oriented. But then ultimately, they need to get to a position where they can start to meet the customer where they are, because maybe partway through this, their customers stop coming because they're working from home or they're having to go to the office and they can't just spend all this time in this low tech business. So companies start to think about, how can I meet my customer where they are? Starbucks did this. So instead of one day, this was actually pre-pandemic, you started being able to order from your phone. I was like, why would I ever want to do that? And you realize most of their orders now come through via their phone. People just come in, they pick up the coffee and they leave. Like, wow, that's a really great way to do this. Well, you get hit the pandemic and everybody's doing this. In fact, it's even routing me to the right locations for me to go that has a lease line. So it's meeting my customer where they are, in a position where they are. And the market isn't necessarily going to go back. People have gotten so used to ordering from their phones that they've disrupted that. But then now that I've met my customers where they are, how can I now monetize that with my customers? Whether that's through data I know about them or their common customers that I can sell them new things, or maybe I'm using that information to be able to become an intelligence source for the broader market. And I can use that intelligence to be able to understand how I direct common companies toward better opportunities. Maybe I'm guiding them. So maybe if I'm building the platform that companies use to sell consumer products in a digital way, maybe now I need to understand that and I can present it back. And then you get to a position where the market itself can be disrupted. Perhaps I don't even have stores. Maybe it gets delivered. Maybe it's a situation where I built the product that they can bring home and nobody goes to the store anymore at all. And then ultimately I start creating industries and I own the industry. The industry is me. And I've shifted it to a new direction. So to a point where this sort of legacy business doesn't even exist anymore. It's a completely new market. So absent product maturity, you're going to sit somewhere on this curve for everything you do for your customers. And the question is, how can I move myself further up the curve? Because the question is, am I going up or am I going down? Very rarely are you static. Very rarely in absent products are you static. You're either moving toward legacy or you're moving toward disruptive, and it's a very intentional move. Let's move to data. So data exists in a similar fashion, but we're thinking about in the context of the data that's important to my organization. Data would be, starting in the lower left-hand corner, is this very manual ecosystem. It's an ecosystem of things I have that are difficult for me to extract value from. And I start to pull that data out. I got a data source, I pull it out into Excel and I use it and it gets presented in some way, but it's customized now. It's used only for that purpose and difficult to recreate. And then maybe I've got another example, and then all these things pop up and it's difficult for me to understand what the right data is. And so companies started to address that by building on-premise data warehouses that really struggled to be able to match time for value. So those projects took 2 to 3 years. Maybe it took a while for me to get to a position where that data was useful. And over time, we figured out, wow, like that, it's delivering value. It's like a big spider web of data flows. Sometimes I'm now just going around it. So where companies have started to move toward is leveraging the modern data framework, which is cloud-based capabilities, which is exposing data in a way that people can get the data they need, but do it in a way which is normalized. And they start to tackle that in conjunction with delivering value as fast as possible to my customers by minimizing time to value, by using things like machine learning and insights and Power BI. And the goal there is to understand a goal, understand a need in the business, meet that need, and allow for me to either get visibility from the modern data framework and get hindsight, or even drive it into predictive understanding of what's going to happen in a particular use case that I can drive direct value from. And once I can predict something, I may be even able to get to a position where I'm not just predicting what's going to happen, but I get to prescriptive on what you should do about it. Because predicting is just determining, hey, this is what's going to happen in a bit. Like, I'm predicting what the weather's going to be. But what if I told you what you should do about that weather? So your best bet is to take this route, because what's going to happen tomorrow is this particular road is going to be terrible and you shouldn't drive on it. We do that all the time as humans, right? Like, my daughter's trying to drive. Like, you shouldn't drive this way because it's going to be a terrible road. You should go this way. You're not going to get up that hill. Prescriptive is about guiding people. And then ultimately storytelling. If it's going to snow tomorrow, then this is going to happen. And you should do this. It's a long-term story, knowing about how it all fits together. So your business exists somewhere on this curve. So think about where you are in the curve and how you're going to move yourself up it toward a better direction. Next conversation is about cloud maturity. So we're now below the line, right? So if those were above the line, thinking about how can I leverage my product or my data to be able to serve my business and my customers, this is about enablement, right? So the cloud maturity curve is about enabling value for my customers, which is starting at an on-premise business. Doesn't leverage the cloud at all. Everything's in the data center. It's limited to what I can do with my hardware, to a point where then the business starts saying, you know what, I'm going to use the cloud whether you like it or not. And then gets to a position where, have I operationalized that? So the business starts going around, starts spinning up cloud instances, doing what they need. None of that's managed. In order for me to earn the right to work with them, I operationalize the cloud. I position it with the right governance for me to be successful. And then on top of that operationalized cloud are the gains. Streamline cloud product development of delivering new capabilities, becoming an innovation differentiator. So the business thinks about technology and cloud as an asset to the core business itself. And then ultimately to where the business thinks of technology as the core asset to its mission, where it's simply a verb in terms of how it executes on what it's important to the business and how what's important to the mission of the organization versus being like a special thing that has to add in. So think about where your organization is on the cloud maturity curve. Have I positioned my organization to be able to achieve these gains? And then once I have I achieved these gains? And what do I need to do as a change agent to move myself up the curve? And then the last one, probably the most complicated, and we'll try to hit it relatively briefly, is the secure model workplace, the working ecosystem of my employees. How complicated have I made that working ecosystem? The lower left-hand corner is a legacy ecosystem, all on-premise identity, on-premise communication capabilities. And then the next step after that is really, have I just moved to a cloud-based productivity ecosystem that normalizes my use cases of how I work by driving the ability for me to just to plug in anywhere I am to a productive environment and get working. And then combine with that, and some people would say these are, directly related to each other, need to exist together, is have I applied minimal security controls to that productive environment, conditional access, that in order to use the productivity environment, there are conditions of how you access that. You have to be on a safe device. You need to be an unhacked user. You need to be in a position where you've authenticated with something you know and something you have and something maybe you are. The relationship of those together then relates into the productivity ecosystem, which then drives up into the true zero trust story, the idea that a device should be on its own as a trusted device, essentially be not trusted until it proves itself to be trusted and is segregated off from other things. So if it is compromised, it can't compromise other things. And then at the top of this curve, you see things like Teams as a platform, Power Platform, driving out low code, no code capabilities across the business, creating a truly digital workplace, not just like I use a computer, but have I driven the work patterns as digital patterns? And then at the top end of workplace analytics, understanding how my people are working and be able to then react to them. So think about again where you are on this curve. How am I doing at driving that capability for my organization? So ultimately, this goes into creating a plan, which we would call a horizon model. A horizon model is about understanding where you are now, understanding where you're going to be, and how you get there. Where you are now is horizon 1. The iteration on that. Horizon 3 is where do I want to be long term, and horizon 2 might be an interim step on the way there. The best way to think about this in my mind, usually people say 3, 1, 2. Start with 3. Where's the long-term vision of where I intend to go? You move to 1, which are the iteration on little things I'm doing now. And then 2 is this next step. So these are some examples of horizons. Horizon 1 would be maybe I'm correcting an immediate security flaw, filling an immediate gap, backing something up, updating an application to a newer version. Maybe Horizon 2 is optimizing my existing supply chain, or I'm moving existing servers into Azure to put controls around them. And then maybe Horizon 3 is things like, do I even have a CorpNet? Or am I, do I really have IT in a sense, or is IT just governance? Have I enabled my new business model via technology that's delivered via the cloud? So, Horizon 1 would exist in a checklist, right? Things that are on a list that I'm just going to assign and get rid of, right? And I'm having a weekly meeting on those things that I need to get done. Horizon 3 is an architecture, which then has perhaps a mid-term architecture like Horizon 2. Horizon 3, this is where I want to get. Horizon 2, I have this interim state I have to take care of. And ultimately, that aligns to a tech stack. So when I think about a cloud transformation tech stack, for example, I move from a Horizon 1 state to where I am now, to a midterm state, to this Horizon 3 state. And beautiful things happen when you, on the tech stack space, can align your team toward a direction. So for any of those cloud maturity curves, or any of those maturity curves, you build a tech stack to where I'm going. You get your team aligned to it. You get your build aligned to it, to what I'm ultimately creating. And then you get rid of all this distraction of things happening and you start building toward that directional understanding. So, for example, an architecture for an application, or a data architecture for a logical flow, or an application development architecture for the languages I'm using, or the components I'm using to be able to do authentication. All of that ties to decisions you make. You build into that architectural direction for Horizon 1, 2, and 3. And you say, this is where I'm moving. Let's get aligned to it. Let's have the battle on what we're doing or not doing, and then start walking toward it. And that lines then to what is skills development. So as you arrive at a horizon that's from the maturity curve, that's tied to being a change agent, ultimately, you're causing your team to learn new skills. So you build out a role level guide, a directional understanding of where I am now, where I expect you to be. All these things we talked about today, everything happening within the technology ecosystem is going to require you to advance your own teams toward a new set of skills. And as change agents, our roles are to understand proactively, how can I build not only the technology toward a new direction that aligns my business to its mission better, but also how I align the people that are mapped to that technology direction so they aren't left in the dust. And if you listen to the Zach Hughes conversation on the Change Agent podcast, that was one of his big topics was, how do I appropriately apply my people and train them to get to the right direction? How do I not leave them behind? This would be an example, like an internal one for concurrency on project managers. Like, what are the skills I expect you to have? And there's a big long list that if you continue down there. And then there's certifications I expect you to have to be able to move up in different directions, whether it's pay as well as capability. And a lot of times people don't have all these skills yet. You put this in front of them, you treat them right to help them gain those right roles, and they become part of a long-term team. So my recommendation to you is to bring it all together, to create an action plan. It centers first around you being a change agent. Someone in your business has to be willing to take a stand and do it. And taking a stand in a positive way. People follow people who are willing to take a stand in a positive way. Be a change agent that thinks about each of those maturity curves in the context of what's important to your organizational mission. Where am I going? Where am I now? And what's the mid step to get there? And maybe you're going right to Horizon 3 because you've already got the plan to do it. Great. But maybe there's a mid step in between now and then. That's not so much of a a disruption as much as it is simply an evolution. That then maps to a timeline. What does it do for me, which is that skills impact? What do I need to do as a technologist to be relevant in this world? And then measurables of how I get there. And the measurables are, if this was important to us and we're willing to do it, and it's the direction we're moving in, and I've mapped my roles, then I need to measure that I actually did it. And I'm going to track progress against that by measuring it. That people were skilled, for example, that I got them to the right training level, that I moved my machines to the cloud that I was moving them to, that I built the application, that I onboarded my customers into my new product, whatever those measurables are, that ultimately 2022 is the year that you really put this plan together and you made progress toward it. So as a change agent, my encouragement to you, and I know we went a little over, is to take the time to construct a plan that has these horizons in mind and thinks about it in that context. And what we love to do next time we get together, so this is where that 2 to 4 hours comes in. Man, it goes fast. That when those 2 to 4 hours come together, we love to dig into those horizons again as groups or one-on-one with your organization. We'd love to do both and dig into them by saying, how do we make the journey up those maturity curves? What do we need to do to position our organization to do so well? And let's ask the questions about what we mean by this or by that or by the other thing. And maybe even share some stories between different companies that are trying to achieve the same goals. So in 2022, I hope this is a fantastic year for your organization in achieving its mission. I know that if you take some of these thoughts into mind, you become change agents, you position your business, and you follow that with the intentional steps to be able to become the change agent that you know you can be by tracking it with a plan, with a maturity, with roles, with measurables, then this can be a better 2022 than you've ever had thought you could have. So again, thank you for taking time. Love that you were here and really looking forward to spending some time with each of you in thinking about your plan and talking about how you can be the best company you can be in 2022. Have a great day, and thanks again for spending some time with us.